When you picture global dominance, what comes to mind? You probably picture massive armies, right? Fleets of aircraft carriers, sheer military size. Well, it's time to completely shatter that misconception. Because modern power isn't just about who has the most tanks, though, hey, those certainly don't hurt. It's about who controls the raw materials, who's leading the AI race, and who is quietly building alternative global financial systems. It's a completely new geopolitical chessboard. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at a truly fascinating April 2026 research report diving deep into the new great powers competition.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our data-driven roadmap for today. 1. The cross-domain scorecard. 2. Unpacking global advantages. 3. 4 scenarios for 2030. And 4. Navigating the next decade.
Starting right off with Section 1, the cross-domain scorecard. Power is domain-specific.
So the huge overarching theme of this 2026 data is that international dominance is highly fragmented right now. To actually measure this without just guessing, the researchers utilized a cross-domain power index. Basically, it's a 1 to 5 scoring framework evaluating national strength across a diverse range of crucial sectors. We're talking technology, energy resilience, critical minerals, finance, and military production. By looking at real-time trade flows, military expenditure data, and satellite imagery, this gives us a totally neutral data-backed foundation. It shows us exactly who's gaining ground, who's losing it, and where the real leverage actually lies.
And this brilliantly illustrates the current balance. Just look at how the scores distribute. The United States leads decisively. They've got a perfect 5 in capital markets, military spending volume, and financial centrality. But then look at China. They completely dominate with 5s in technological adoption at scale and critical minerals. And then, well, there's Russia. They score mostly 1s and 2s here, which really reflects their structural decay and massive labor shortages. They've essentially degraded into a specialized spoiler. Sure, they're structurally weakening in most domains, but they maintain just enough leverage in energy and attritional warfare, wearing the opponent down over time to disrupt the whole system.
Moving right along to Section 2, Unpacking Global Advantages. Let's look at the stats behind the scores. Let's talk about the AI and tech domain. The United States leads the world in invention. They have the deepest capital markets and hold a massive advantage in frontier AI models. I mean, think of massive investments like the UAE's MGX, backing that $122 billion funding round for OpenAI. The sheer scale of that capital is staggering. But China's advantage is entirely different. They lead in manufacturing scale and state-scale AI deployment. China integrates AI across government, surveillance, logistics, and military systems at a speed that Western democratic governance simply cannot match. Basically, the US invents it, and China adopts it everywhere.
Now let's talk about energy resilience. Check out this number, 1.4 billion. That is the number of barrels of oil sitting in China's strategic petroleum reserve. When conflicts like the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz disrupt global shipping, the conventional wisdom is that China's economy is highly vulnerable. But actually, scratch that, the data shows the exact opposite. With 1.4 billion barrels, China has roughly 6 months of import coverage. Combine that with their pipeline supplies from Russia and a massive green energy baseload, and Beijing is heavily shielded from energy shocks. It's actually the rest of the world, places like Europe, Japan, and India, that are deeply exposed to these crises.
Which brings us to another area where China holds a perfect score, of 5, critical minerals. China controls an astonishing 69.2% of global rare earth mine production. But you know what? The real power is in the processing. China controls up to 90% of global processing and 94% of permanent magnet manufacturing. These are the physical, real-world materials required for literally everything from wind turbines to missile guidance systems. This near monopoly gives Beijing what the report calls a refining veto over global supply chains. No way around it. That is absolute leverage.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the U.S. finance score. Yes, the United States holds a 5 in finance, but it is facing some serious headwinds. Notice the stark drop here. The U.S. dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves has fallen from about 85% back in the 1970s to around 58% by 2024 and 2025. This isn't just a temporary blip, folks. It is structural de-dollarization, driven by the BRICS nations accumulating thousands of tons of gold and developing alternative payment rails like rupee-ruble settlements and yuan-based energy trades. The post-1945 financial order is slowly fragmenting so they can bypass Western sanctions.
All right, Section 3, 4 scenarios for 2030, forecasting the next decade.
So, where is all this friction taking us? Let's count down through these 4 calculated trajectories for 2030. Step 1 is Trajectory D, a systemic shock, like a direct great power war over Taiwan. Thankfully, this is the least likely at just 5%. Step 2 is Trajectory C, cooperative multipolarity, sitting at 15%. This would require a major global shock, like another pandemic, to force everyone to actually work together. Step 3 is Trajectory B, protracted conflict, at 35%, where current proxy wars just drag on endlessly without any resolution. And finally, Step 4, our absolute most probable outcome at 45%, Trajectory A, bifurcated blocks.
Let's focus deeply on that most likely outcome, Trajectory A, bifurcated blocks. With a whopping 45% probability, the data suggests the world isn't just shifting, it's rapidly hardening into 2 distinct, separated camps. On one side, you have a US-led axis including the EU, Japan, and Australia. On the exact opposite side, a bloc consisting of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Under this bifurcated reality, the globe essentially splits. We're going to see heavily fragmented trade, technology, and finance. Supply chain decoupling is going to drastically accelerate as both sides desperately try to reduce reliance on the other. Military competition will be incredibly intense, though carefully managed through deterrence. And perhaps most importantly here, the Global South becomes a marketplace of alignments. In this scenario, India acts as the absolute critical swing state. With its massive defense budget and strategic positioning, whichever way New Delhi leans is going to largely dictate the balance of power in Asia.
To understand how we get to those blocks, we have to look at the fighting happening right now. The report drops this incredibly crucial insight. The kinetic conflicts, Ukraine and Hormuz, are serving as stress tests, not deciders. So the key takeaway is that these current proxy wars aren't actually producing clear global victors. Instead, they're simultaneously reshaping alliances, bleeding the US and its allies of resources, and allowing China to quietly accumulate strategic advantages from the sidelines. They are literally the catalysts shaping that bifurcated world of 2030.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Navigating the Next Decade, Policy and Business Responses. So, knowing that this bifurcated world is our most likely destination, how do we operate within it? Well, surviving this shifting landscape requires accepting some genuinely tough trade-offs. For policymakers, the U.S. absolutely must reform alliance burden sharing to demand real, tangible capability contributions from partners. Western nations must aggressively expand their own domestic critical mineral processing, which, and this is the tough part, means they're going to have to accept heavy environmental cost to break China's refining monopoly. Militarily, forces have to shift focus away from just using expensive, highly complex systems, often called exquisite platforms, and instead invest heavily in autonomous drone swarms. And for business leaders out there, single-source dependencies are completely uninsurable now. Businesses must actively prepare for a world utilizing alternative settlement currencies outside the US dollar.
Let's wrap up with a question for you to ponder. We've seen the scorecard. We've unpacked the metrics on AI, energy, and minerals, and we know the 4 potential trajectories. Based on the headlines you read this morning, the trade deals being struck, and the military budgets being passed right now, which of these 4 2030 scenarios do you think we are accelerating toward today? Keep this explainer scorecard in mind as you watch global events unfold, because it absolutely changes exactly how you see the board. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer, and keep learning.